Hello, this is Joe Polish, president of Piranha Marketing and founder of the Genius Network interview series, and you're about to hear one of my Genius Network interviews, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you find it very useful. If you want to find out more information about some of the interviews and resources that can help you in your business, you can go to www.joepolish.com. And we have a Joe Polish Recommends section with all kinds of resources and vendors and services and products that we recommend that can help you in your business. And also for more useful interviews and a whole list of other people that I've interviewed, you can go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks and enjoy the interview.
Hello, this is Joe Polish, president of Piranha Marketing and founder of the Genius Network interview series. And today I'm going to be interviewing one of the top business geniuses on the planet, also an incredibly cool guy, Sir Richard Branson. If you don't already know who Sir Richard Branson is, he's ballooned across the Atlantic. He's signed the Sex Pistols and Janet Jackson and Boy George and all kinds of famous musicians. He's been knighted by the Queen. His mega brand Virgin is home to more than 350 companies, from gyms, gambling houses, and bridal boutiques, to fleets of planes, trains, and limousines. He even owns his own island, Necker Island. And now Richard Branson is moving onward and upward into space, tourism, and his company Virgin Galactic is slated to start carrying passengers into the thermosphere in 2009 at a whopping $200,000 a ticket, which, you know, is probably a good deal for space travel. Anyway, Branson also has a philanthropic streak. He's pledged the next 10 years of profits from his transportation empire, an amount that's expected to reach $3 billion, to the development of renewable alternatives to carbon fuels. And then there's his Virgin Earth Challenge, which offers a $25 million prize to the first person to come up with an economically viable solution to the greenhouse gas problem. He's risked his life numerous times. He's done all kinds of crazy things, and in spite of that, he's been enormously successful. His company has revenues of $25 billion a year. He has over 50,000 employees. And he knows a lot of people and knows a lot of stuff about running a business. So join me as I interview Sir Richard Branson, and we're going to talk about success and contribution and how you can have the same sort of things in your own entrepreneurial venture. Before I get started, Richard, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to do this interview with me. Where are you at right now? You're at Necker Island?
I'm very fortunately in Necker Island, and I also just like to say thank you for your generosity, because you give a lot to charitable foundations in Africa, and that will make an enormous big difference to a lot of people's lives. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, and of course you're the catalyst behind that, and so many other things. And so the listeners heard a little bit about who you are. I'm sure when people think of who is the coolest entrepreneur in the world, I'd say if you were to take a survey, your name would probably come up number one, if not one of the top. And you have such a huge reputation. And so a lot of people focus on you and who you are as a very successful individual. So before we get started, since the theme of this interview I'd like to be around success and contribution, is what is Sir Richard Branson's definition of success?
I think as a business person, it's creating something that I can be proud of, creating something that the people around me can be proud of, creating something that really makes a difference, that maybe shakes up whole industries and actually results in people's lives never being quite the same again, and hopefully for the better. So I want to get out there and create things that make a real difference.
Gotcha. Now, just curious, like as a billionaire, do you feel successful on most days? I mean, how do you actually feel as a person?
Well, I've obviously been born fortunate. I mean, I love people. I enjoy every single minute of my life. It's not all roses. There's ups and downs, but I'm an eternal optimist. I always look for the best in everything, and as a result, I think I get the best, and no complaints at all, basically.
Okay, good. Now, what does a successful day look like to you, though? I mean, I'm just absolutely curious about how do you spend most of your days? I mean, of course, you do so many different things, so there's probably not just one way, but what are some of the things that you do in a day that you think would be valuable for our listeners to maybe know about and perhaps model in their own lives?
Well, I mean, my life is incredibly varied, which makes it extremely interesting. And what I'll do is I'll go off for 10-day trips and fill in, work sort of 17 hours a day and fill an awful lot in. And I mean, in the last 10 days, I've been to, I think, 12 different countries, everything from Darfur with the elders, through to Amsterdam, for an environmental conference, through to to Canada, where we're launching a new rock concert, to New York, where we were talking about the space program and so on. So it is very varied. I mean, as the chairman of the company, I should think I spend about 25% of my time helping, make sure that that all the people who are running the various companies around the world, that their particular venture is put on the map on a maybe on a global basis, and that we're trying to build the Virgin brand as to one of the most respected brands in the world. So I should think as much as 25% of my time is spent on marketing and that side. I should think about 25% of my time is spent on new ventures and really trying to learn everything there is about the new ventures before we launch them. And about 10% of my time is spent on firefighting, and making sure that I've got the time to firefight if something's going wrong somewhere. And about 40% of my time is spent on social issues and building new organizations, but more for the benefit of the climate or health issues and or charitable issues. So that's roughly how my time's divided.
That's actually very valuable for myself, of course, and certainly for all our listeners. Now, so 25% on new ventures, 25% on marketing, which of course I love because I'm in the marketing business, 10% on firefighting, and 40% on social issues. So it seems that your humanitarian activities and your business ventures are, as you've gotten older in life, are becoming one and the same. Do you feel for all entrepreneurs there's a responsibility to create value beyond cash?
I think that capitalism is basically the only system that is known to work. Communism has proved to be a failure. But the problem with capitalism is that a few individuals become extremely wealthy, and therefore with that wealth comes extreme responsibility. And I don't work any harder than a really good junior doctor works, or I don't work any harder than a really good secretary works, or I don't work any harder than a really good dentist works, or journalists. But because I'm a business leader, I've got extreme wealth. And what is absolutely critical, I think, is that if you find yourself in that position, or you've sold a company, or you make sure that money is not wasted away in bank accounts, but it's put to good use. It's reinvested in creating new jobs. It's part of it is used towards tackling the numerous problems in the world, and that you get a balance right. As I say, with capitalism comes responsibility, and you've just got to get that balance.
For people that are out there, were you always that way from the very beginning, or what were the defining moments and shifts throughout your career, throughout your life that shifted you to start spending 40% of your time on social issues, or did you always do that?
You can't afford to do it when you're building a company in the early days. The only word that really matters is survival, and if you don't survive, you certainly can't later on in your life do good. And so, although I may have been inclined to help, in fact, when I was a teenager, I set up an advisory center for young people to help them when they ran into problems, and that actually 35 years later, that center still goes. The bigger dreams that I might have had then, obviously, I couldn't put into practice because I didn't have the financial resources. But now we do have the financial resources. We also have the know-how and the entrepreneurial skills to look at issues in the world and social issues in the world and see if we can't tackle them in a better way than say charitable organizations or voluntary organizations have done in the past. And so we've got the funds to do it, but we've also got the knowledge that's gone with being able to say build companies from scratch and knowing how to deal with people and motivate people and so on.
Right. Well, I'm going to ask you a couple questions about that, of course. And I certainly one of the things I want to focus on, too, is fun, because you do so many freaking crazy things, and you just seem to have so much darn fun. I do want to definitely make sure that our listeners leave with the ability to also get an understanding of all the contributions that you're making with Virgin Unite. I did a fabulous interview with Gene Olwang on social entrepreneurism, which we'll make available to all our listeners as a result of hearing this interview, so they can see all the different things that you're doing. What I'd like to hear is what's your definition of a social entrepreneur?
It's basically just somebody that uses. I think Gene may have different definitions than me, but anyway, it's basically someone who uses their entrepreneurial skills to tackle social problems. And for instance, Africa has thousands of different organizations doing wonderful works in Africa, but there's no coordination. So, somebody may in Nigeria have come up with a way of, the best way of killing mosquitoes, but that information will not necessarily be made available to people in Kenya, or somebody in South Africa may have come up with a way of making sure that a mother doesn't pass on her HIV status to her baby, whereas somebody in Morocco may not know about it. And so basically, we're for instance using our entrepreneurial skills to set up a war room, or we may come up with a different name, but where we can coordinate all these ideas and disseminate information, look for best practices, and try to make sure that the limited amount of resources that are going around in Africa are best spent, and that these enormous amounts of problems that exist there, hopefully we can help get on top of.
Yeah, I imagine you're solving tons of them. That's one. I had the opportunity to have dinner with you with a small group of people, and what I really liked about it when you first showed up is that I've met some pretty successful people, and with that comes a lot of ego, and certainly we've never spent an enormous amount of time together or anything. We had dinner in person and stuff. However, you just struck me as just a person that really, first thing out of your mouth and during the dinner was, how can I help you guys? What would you like to talk about? Not this ego thing, and you just were genuinely, from everything that I could imagine, just a really cool person that really cares and wants to help people. You have done so many great things, which is, of course, why I love supporting what it is you're doing. And my goal and objective, not only through our efforts of you speaking at my conference and everything, but just in general, getting your message out to lots of entrepreneurs so that they can support what it is you're doing through Virgin Unite, and they can hear all about it. What I do want to ask you is, how do you stay balanced with all that you have going on? You come across as relaxed, cool, calm. Are you really that way, or do you get kind of stressed out at times?
Fortunately, I think I am generally fairly calm, and I certainly don't ever lose my temper, because I just think that would be counterproductive. I think that again, if you're running a company, if you raised your voice against somebody else, that would be like hitting them with a stick. They would be so wounded by it. So one has to be extremely careful, not to criticize people, to sort of, to make sure you look for the best in people and lavish praise on people. And I'm not the kind of person that gets uptight about things. Obviously, if my family member was ill, yes, I would get stressed. But the majority of things that one can get stressed about, they're not worth getting stressed about. If you've got a roof over your head, you can afford your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you've got good friends around you to hold your hands when things are going wrong. Then everything else is a bonus on a bunch on top. If something does go wrong, or looks like it's going to go wrong, I'll work day and night to try to avoid it going wrong. But as long as I've given it everything I can to try to avert the disaster, whatever the disaster was, if it happens, then I'll sleep well at night and move on to the next project or the next challenge. So I'm quite fortunate that I don't I'm not the sort of person who does get stressed.
Okay, that's great. I mean, do you ever get bogged down by, the things that I think bogged down, including myself at times, a lot of entrepreneurs, phone calls, meetings, emails, things like that? I mean, the areas of business and life that bog you down, how do you handle it, or have you literally structured yourself to where that just simply doesn't happen to you?
Well, I certainly get my fair share of emails. And I have a good team of people who go through them and try to deal with as many as possible. But there's still, I have to think, a couple of hundred a day, which I just have to deal with. And I will, confront the most urgent ones early on in the morning, and then some of the least urgent ones, it may take me 5 days or 10 days to get them answered. But I am a believer in trying to treat people properly and trying to respond and trying to, and making sure that, I find the time to be courteous, as much as is physically possible. I've met entrepreneurs who have surprised me. Who literally just dump all their emails. They've made a lot of money. They don't, feel it necessary to answer them. And, personally, the kinds of people who will be writing to them are the, people who might be trying to build businesses or charities or, need advice, need help. I don't think that's the right way of going about it. I just think it's slightly immoral approach to life.
Wow, you're actually touching on a lot of things that I think open up the core of who you are, which I think is the chain reaction to why you've not only had so much quote unquote financial success, but why you have, I believe, such a good reputation. And just a quick story: when I first flew to the UK a few times, and the first time I flew a couple years ago on Virgin Atlantic upper class. I was completely blown away because I have a buddy named Dan Sullivan who founded a company here in the United States in Canada called the Strategic Coach, which coaches very high-level entrepreneurs, just an amazing thinker. And we've had lots of Richard Branson conversations. And he has this saying, the airline industry's motto is, we're not happy till you're not happy. And that's how most experiences that I have at airlines are that way. But when I flew Virgin, upper class, you got a massage, something like 160 movies on the plane. You order food whenever you want. The thing that really struck me the most, though, was the team, the stewardesses, the crew. It was a long flight, so I'm talking to them, and there was one of the gals there that had gotten married on your island. Actually, she didn't, but her friend did, and she was there with a lot of the Virgin staff. And, said, well, how's Richard? And they're like, oh, he's so cool. He's so amazing. He's the nicest guy. I mean, all these people had nothing but glowing things to say about you that work for you. They're all advocates. And so my question to you, if you could identify, because I think it's so instructional, or why do you think so many people admire you, love you, respect you? I mean, I always hear so many positive and encouraging things from people that you work with, and you've created this amazing culture at Virgin from everything I've read from you, from what I've heard from you. That the people stay around. I mean, how the heck do you do this, and how can the listeners sort of do those same things in their own organization?
Anyway, first of all, thanks for those kind words. I as I said, I love people, so that I'm very fortunate to have been brought up in that way, and some people are just brought up in a way where they're not so good with people, and it's more difficult for them. I was brought up by parents who would lavish praise upon me. Who would look for the best in me, who would, by the only time they'd ever criticize me would be if I was about to walk across the road and get run over. I mean, they were very, really sort of, full of encouragement. And I know that, it worked for our family and the 50,000 people who work for Virgin. We very much tried to make sure that the kinds of people who run our companies are the kinds of people who, again, look for the best in people and lavish praise upon people and spend as much time and attention on, the switchboard operator and the cleaning lady as they would on their fellow directors. I think that if you're the chairman of a company, it is important, if you're going down route to a city that, if you're having a party in that city, that you invite all the staff in that city to that party, and you're not just inviting clients and or fellow directors, and that if you do invite all your staff to the party in a particular city, that you get out and you spend time with them, and you have a little notebook in your back pocket so that they've got ideas. You can even if you've had a few drinks and you're propping up the bar, that that you make sure that you get out that notebook and you scribble those ideas down, so the next day you can actually do something about it. And I think the absolute key is being a good listener. Can you get out, party, have fun with your staff. Don't worry about making a fool of yourself, and most importantly, actually then do something the next day about the kinds of things which they will tell you. And in one evening, I suspect, if you're a good listener, you'll have 20 or so things that your staff will have suggested to you. At least 18 of those 20 will be valid things to follow through and deal with. And if you get all the little details right in your company, and it's often the small things that actually niggle people, if you get all those little details right, then you'll have a happy company and a successful company.
Last stat that I heard was you have 55,000 employees, and you're doing something like $25 billion a year in revenue. Is that still the accurate number?
That's roughly right. Yeah.
Okay, well that is like a ton of people and a lot of things that require attention. And I also heard you once in an interview, I think the TED conference, you said that you didn't really know the difference between net and gross, which I thought is amusing as hell, because my eyes glaze over when I have to look at P&Ls. Although I have a guy here in my company who lives for that, which is I can't even figure that out. But nonetheless, what are the top 2 or 3 keys to, I guess, manage or lead an organization as large as yours, if you could even identify those?
Well, obviously you have to be a good delegator, and we've got something like 350 different companies, and if I hadn't been a good delegator when I only had one company, I most likely would still only have one company. So, well, you've got to try to find people who are better than yourself to delegate to. You've then got to stand back and give them a lot of freedom to make mistakes as well as to make good things. Most likely you should give them a stake in the company so that they can run it as an entrepreneur, and you're not going to then lose them. Or even worse, they could end up going and competing with you. So they can hopefully do extremely well by staying with you and working with you. I think those are being a good delegator. I think it's the most important first step.
Well, you have 350 companies roughly, and how do you break them up? I mean, what's the structure? Do you, after they get to a certain size, do you spin it off as a new company? Do you report to 350 people that lead all these companies, or what's kind of the structure of a Virgin look like? Because I'm just trying to get an idea of really how you do it, because I think it's so darn instructional to all of our listeners, many that just are mom and pop operations, to people that are running very large multi-million dollar organizations.
We have a very flat structure, so each of these companies have quite a lot of say in actually making quite big decisions. We are protected against one company going completely haywire and bringing the rest of the Virgin Group down in not effectively having a group. So each of these companies stand on their own 2 feet. And although they have a brand which they've got to protect zealously and make sure that doesn't get damaged, if, God forbid, something dramatically went wrong with the company, it's not going to bring the rest of the Virgin Group crashing down. Fortunately, we've never actually had a company go bust, but in fact, for reputational reasons, we'll bail out companies that do have problems. But if there was an absolute catastrophe, then the group is protected. We have a small central team that that the managing directors of those 250 companies will report into, and they will review how the individual companies are doing on a weekly basis, and keep a check on things, and that frees me up to dive in on the bigger issues. I mean, right now we're trying to rescue a big bank in England called Northern Rock and turn it into a Virgin Bank that's run into financial difficulties because of the mortgage crisis, and so I'm freed. I'm freed up to be able to give that some sort of time and attention and give us the best chance of pulling it off.
I mean, do you ever take complete free days where you do nothing work related? You just simply let your mind just relax and gel and be creative and do what it does? I mean, aside from getting stranded in airplanes in the middle of the ocean or things along those lines, do you schedule actual recovery sort of days and stuff, or are you just constantly always doing stuff?
No, I do. I mean, like the last couple of weeks ago, I had a group of friends to Necker Island, and pretty well, shut myself off from work, and played a lot of tennis, did a lot of kite surfing, did some ordinary surfing, and so I mean, it's obviously incredibly important to keep the body fit in order to keep the mind fit, and be able to find time for friends, and I'm very fortunate having Necker Island, which where effectively it's can invite friends and family and pull up the drawbridge and walk around all day in a swimming costume and with no shoes and socks on, and recharge the batteries. Equally, I do have a small team of people here who can so that if I need to work, which obviously most of the time I do, I can get my work done as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, you you do so many things that are absolutely hysterical. I mean, there's a lot of things out there that the listeners can pursue too. They obviously can read your book, Losing My Virginity, and they can Screw It, Let's Do It, and also the biography that I think A&E did on you, which you're in everything from women's makeup for the Virgin Bride thing, which I don't think that one. I don't know what happened to that, but nonetheless, when you're not in tanks or jumping off of buildings and slamming into them and all kinds of stuff, you're always doing a lot of fun things. So how important is just the element of fun? And let me preface this with saying that one of the main things that I teach to business owners is what I refer to as ELF marketing, which stands for easy, lucrative, and fun. I say you can have an ELF business, which is easy, lucrative, and fun, or you can have a half business, which is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. And even if it's lucrative, it could be hard, annoying, lucrative, and frustrating. So I try to infuse as much fun into my business as I can. And my staff and my team, they're actually always trying to calm me down because I'm the goofball. And my office is crazy. I've got all kinds of bizarre stuff. One day I'd love to create enough value for you to where I'd actually have you come down to my headquarters. I think you'd love my building. But nonetheless, you have a really fun organization on all levels. What can all of the listeners learn from you and how you just live life, aside from potentially getting themselves killed by doing life-risking things? What are the fun elements of business that have made you who you are?
Well, first of all, I think it's important for people who run businesses to remember that the people who work with them or for them, that for 80% of their lives are going to be spent, doing that, and it's important to realize that 80%, if it's 80% of your life, it should be fun. I mean, you can take certain aspects of business seriously, but once you've dealt with the safety issues, the rest should be fun and can be fun. And if your staff having a fun time and really enjoying what they do, then the customers who come into contact with them are going to have a fun time and enjoy coming into contact with your company as well. That can then also move on into your marketing. I mean, don't be dry. Do do it with a sense of fun. I mean, say one example would be, British Airways decided to sponsor a giant wheel opposite the House of Commons, and early one morning I got a telephone call and said all the press were there to watch this wheel being erected, and that they were having some technical issues. So I scrambled an airship from which we had a little airship company which was close by, and we put a massive big sign on the back which said BA can't get it up, and we flew straight over this wheel that was still languishing on the ground, and that and just that one little thing went all over the world, and so I think again, if you can do things with a smile, do things with a sense of humor, take the mickey out of your competitors sometimes, be willing to accept that they're going to do the same back to you, and again, just not take yourself too seriously. I think that's important. I mean, I've obviously gone to extreme lengths in trying to put the Virgin brand on the map. Whether it's trying to be the fastest across the Atlantic in a boat, and or the first across the Atlantic in a hot air balloon, and I've ended up being pulled out of the sea about 6 times by helicopters. So that most of that was fun. In retrospect, looking back on it, it was equally, it was foolish as well to an extent. And I mean, one of the other rules about business should be protecting the downside and making sure that if the worst eventuality happens, it's not going to bring all your companies crashing down. Well, the same should apply to your personal life, but anyway.
But of course, you've probably challenged that at times. Well, the saying that there's a fine line between genius and insanity. I mean, this drive that many very successful entrepreneurs and just successful people in many areas, from entertainment to actors and all kinds of levels of high skill. Is there an insane individual living inside most successful entrepreneurs?
Yes, I suspect so. I mean, I think you have to be a little insane to try to fly around the world in a balloon, or you have to be a little insane to say go from running a record company to wanting to run an airline. So you have to be a little bit insane to start fantasizing that you'll be able to take people into space one day, or start thinking that maybe you could develop a fuel a clean fuel over a dirty fuel or whatever. I mean, you've got to. Not whether the word insane is right, but you've got to. Anyway, you've got to love a challenge, and you've got to be willing to, push the limits beyond what other people think is impossible, and never accept no for an answer. I suppose a successful entrepreneur just love to prove people wrong, and because 90% of every entrepreneur who's listening to this will know that the idea that they came up with, or everybody will tell them why they shouldn't do it, and the good entrepreneurs are the ones that think actually take that as a challenge and want to go out and prove all those skeptics wrong.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think everyone that's accomplished anything in life had to, really at some point in time listen to their own counsel when the rest of the world was saying you couldn't do it, or the majority were cynics or negatives or naysayers or whatever. And I really believe that if you want to have a breakthrough, you got to break something, and you certainly have broken many rules and all kinds of stuff. So deep down inside, I mean, what is it that motivates you more than anything? I mean, this risk-taking, to this adventurism, to this taking on a challenge, to this looking at business as a game, or however you look at it. What is that? Where does that come from?
You only live once, and I just don't want to waste a minute of my life. So I want to test myself and test the people around me, and I want to create wonderful things in this life. And I have great difficulty saying no, and I'm now in a position where there are so many wonderful challenges still to be tackled, and I mean there's there's the awesome challenge of trying to, make sure that the world doesn't destroy itself by continuing to pollute itself, and so we're putting, we've committed to put $3 billion, all the profits from our airline businesses, into trying to come up with clean fuels, and we're in a position where I think we may well come up with a fuel that can be used in planes and trains and cars that doesn't damage the environment, and it would be incredibly satisfying to be able to pull that off, and hopefully one day my grandchildren will maybe say thanks to Granddad for, if we can pull it off. But at least we're going to give it our best shot. Equally, there are hundreds of thousands of people who would love the chance to go to space, and if we could do that in an environmentally friendly way, space is not really the last frontier. It's a frontier that goes on forever out there, and tremendously exciting to see if that can be pulled off, and we think we can pull it off. And 18 months from now, we'll start a whole new space program, and so in this position to make a difference. I suppose another major thing which we just launched is the Elders Project, which is with Nelson Mandela and Gracia Michel and Archbishop Tutu, and that is to find the 12 most respected people in the world and have them look at conflict situations in the world that are not being addressed successfully by member states or the United Nations might be having difficulty addressing, and seeing if these 12 fantastic women and men can make a difference, and I think over the coming years, the elders really could make a massive difference, and that's something which is obviously pleasing and satisfying to have been in a position with Peter Gabriel to got set up.
Well, how can our listeners contribute to the causes that you're interested in? What would you recommend for people to not only constantly find out? And of course, I'm going to do everything I can on my end to get this message out, which is the sole purpose of interviewing you and sharing this with entrepreneurs and with the listeners. But what do you recommend they can do to contribute to some of the causes that you're supporting? Because that's the only way that anything happens, is you get people that build it. You're a catalyst for so many things, and if you go deep with it, then you absolutely will reduce enormous amounts of human suffering, potentially save the world from itself, and make a heck of a lot more people happier, healthier, and put a smile on their face. So how can our listeners help?
First of all, as I said earlier, I think if you're building a business and it's in the early days, you shouldn't be expected to do too much, because I know how difficult it is to build a business, and the important thing is that you've got a strong foundation before you start to try to save the world or help other people. Once you've actually got into the position of where you feel your business is secure and that you can make a difference, then obviously we'd love to work with you on seeing if there's areas we can help together on. Maybe if you've got a foundation, we could help work with your foundation, or if you haven't, people might be interested in working with Virgin Unite, and we have a website with Virgin Unite, and we have information on the website on all the different kinds of projects, and there could be that some appeal to people more than others. But if anybody really wants to get involved in a major way, I would suggest they get in touch with you, actually, because you've got my email, and I'd obviously be delighted to hear from anybody.
Wonderful, yeah. And what I'll do with this interview at the end, we'll give out websites, virginunite.com, of course. People can go, and we'll also give out resources and things. And I will have a website set up where this interview, where people can listen to online and then share it with other entrepreneurs. and get more information and listen to my interview with Gene, and just I'll continually keep it abreast and people updated on the things that you're doing and how they can help, because it's a lot of really cool stuff. You know, one of the things that first attracted me to when we had dinner was what you're doing in Africa with teaching entrepreneurism and just literally teaching people how to be more supportive and develop with their own existing resources, how to just be better. I mean, that's I think capitalism and entrepreneurism is what makes the world go around, and what's going to really create the most effect and change, way more than bureaucracy or, I believe, government ever will. Now,
we have a school in Africa called the Branson School of Entrepreneurship, which is basically teaching kids from the townships, how to become entrepreneurs. I mean, it's not an easy thing to teach. It's, a lot of becoming an entrepreneur is something which people have to learn just from getting out there and giving it a go, and having to learn the art of survival. But anyway, we are trying to teach people, and as part of that program, we've got entrepreneurs around the world who are investing in some of these people's ideas. Sometimes they'll be doing it with the idea of making a bit of a return on it. Sometimes they may be doing it, purely for charitable purposes. But it's quite an interesting project in Johannesburg.
Now, I would be doing a disservice to my own area of expertise and to many of my listeners if I didn't ask you a question about marketing. So you are such a phenomenal promoter, and I wanted to ask you how important are marketing and promotions to a business, and out of all these wacky things that you do you drive or design any of the marketing campaigns, or have you just literally hired the best people? I mean, how important is all this marketing stuff, and how do you do it?
Well, first of all, I think if you're setting up a new company, you want to try to find a brand that can work that can work on a global basis. And we had two names. We had Virgin and we had Slip Disc Records as the short list, and obviously Slip Disc Airlines wouldn't have worked, and so we're quite fortunate that we ended up with Virgin.
You know what? Some of the airlines in America should be called Slip Disc Airlines because they're pretty. But anyway.
Well, I wouldn't disagree on that one. So getting a good brand is, and particularly if you're going to move it into other areas, to have a brand that works, well on, clothes or, a whole range of different products, and it's not easy to find the right brand. We in fact had real problems trying to even register the name Virgin because the registry office thought it was rude, and I had to write a long letter explaining that Virgin was the opposite of rude, but finally we got it registered. And then I think that it's publicity, getting your brand or getting your company's name out and about is absolutely critical, particularly if you're a consumer-orientated brand, and you have to be willing to use yourself as well as your dollars you spend in advertising to get your brand on the map. I think that often a good PR story is far more effective than a full-page ad, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper. And if you can do it in a fun way, in a way that you're going to enjoy doing, and then so much the better. And if you can actually even do it, or you get other people to pay for it, as we managed to in the early days, with some of our adventures. Again, even better still. But I have an absolute rule. If CNN, ring me up and want to do an interview with me, I'll drop everything to do it, because it's a global chance to get the brand across on a global basis. And a lot of chairmen of companies, will tell their PR people they're too busy, or they're frightened about getting themselves out in front of cameras, and they really shouldn't be frightened of it. They've got to be brave and bold and use themselves to put their companies on the map.
Yeah, and you have done a phenomenal job of doing that in pretty wild ways, which I'm sure just freaks out many of the people in your company every time you come up with the next stunt. Well, yeah, let me do a plug for your airline, because you're now in America. You got Virgin America, and with many of the people listening, many may have never flown on a Virgin Airlines, and I can just assure you that it is experiential to the umpteenth degree, with very pleasant people, to so many little details paid attention to, and you'll learn a lot about how to run a business just by flying on any Virgin Airline. So why should someone fly on a Virgin Airline flight here in America? I mean, what's the difference between what you're doing and your competition?
The only time that Virgin will set up a new business is if the sector that we're moving into is abysmally run, and to be perfectly frank, the American domestic airline industry has been abysmally run for decades now. I mean, Americans generally are the best, the best restaurants, the best clubs, the best hotels, but it's somehow passed the American airline business by, and so what we've done is we've obviously had 21 years of experience in building airlines around the world. We've finally got permission to be involved in setting up an airline in America, despite the fact that I'm English and don't have an American accent. And we've got brand new planes. So the reliability is is much better than our competitors. We've got the best entertainment system in the world, which for a domestic airline in America is extremely rare. We've got the best seating, we've got the best lighting, we've got fantastic crews, we've got good food. If you want to talk to somebody in seat 28K and you're sitting in 2C and you quite fancy them, you can send them a message on their screen, and they can decide whether they want to answer back or not.
So that term, quite fancy, then, for Americans that don't know what that means, that would be like if you actually like someone a few rows down?
Yeah, if you want to have a bit of a dating agency, we've got that on the plane.
Right. No, I totally know what you're saying, but that's good.
If the stewardess hasn't been down the aisle in the last 60 seconds, you can order your food on the screen, and she'll get the message in in her cabin. We've reintroduced first class, which is super nice first class, and just generally try to make flying domestically in America bearable again and enjoyable. And I think by getting all the details right, then our cabin crew are proud of working for the airline, and they'll do it with a smile, and we're getting fantastic feedback. So we just got to roll on more planes as fast as we can in America, so we can give more people the chance to fly it.
Yeah, no, and I just seriously want to encourage everyone to fly Virgin. It is really, really cool, and compared to anything else that's happening, I've never experienced anything in the airline industry that even holds a candle to it. And really, the whole saying that the airline motto that my buddy Dan Sullivan said is we're not happy till you're not happy. I've experienced that. I travel a lot, and it is abysmal. And I'm so happy that you are doing that, because it will raise the bar, and hopefully you get the majority of the business, because you're the one paying attention to it, and that's awesome. Now, who are the people in your life that have been your role models and mentors? Certainly a person at your level has had to have associated with some incredible people, so I'd love to find out who some of those people are.
Obviously I've had the pleasure of really getting to know this incredible group of elders who are now working together instead of working separately and trying to tackle the world's problems. So, people like Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu and the Dalai Lama and President Carter and Kofi Annan and what strikes me about them is apart from their humility and their the knowledge and their listening power is it's their incredible sense of humor. I don't know, I just wrote a note to Archbishop Tutu, and I just got one word back: yippee, for the person who's in charge of the Anglican Church in Africa. But the enthusiasm for life and the fact that some of these people are in their 80s, even 90s, and and they're absolutely determined to get out there and make a difference. In Nelson Mandela's case, he in prison for 28 years, forgave his captors, came out of prison and not only forgave them but invited them into his cabinet to make sure that South Africa remained united, and sets up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission with Archbishop Tutu heading it. Nobody to be prosecuted, nobody to be executed, people to apologize for some of the horrendous crimes that they committed. But it resulted in a country that is a shining beacon to the rest of the world. Look at the difference.
Yeah, that's incredible, actually. I mean, especially Nelson Mandela with the time he was in prison and just the compassion he has for humanity. I mean, let's take. I mean, you're buddies with Al Gore, right?
I've had the privilege of getting to know him.
I was just going to say, if you were to get in a fight with him, do you think you could take him physically? I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I don't think I'd stand a dog's chance. He's a tall. He's quite a strong-looking lad.
Now, you said enthusiasm for life with all these elders. I think that is one of the most critical elements of anything, because enthusiasm covers an enormous amount of deficiencies. I mean, it's one of the things that got me through in life when I had no skill set whatsoever. And the origination of the name Virgin came from, I don't want to try to, say the story. I mean, it was because you basically didn't know what you were doing and you thought a virgin would be an appropriate name?
Yeah, I was 15, 16 years old, and I was inexperienced, and I was inexperienced in business as well, and so and I think one or two of the girls who were sitting around all joked that they were all virgins or something. I don't know, but it was the '60s fun, and it turned out to be an appropriate name for somebody setting up a business who had no business experience whatsoever.
Now, you use, let me go back to the elders and stuff things too, because I want to leave the listeners with some how-to tips. What would you recommend to listeners on people to pursue that could not only help them in business with business advice and, even doing what you're doing now? I mean, you're just contributing by sharing your life experience and your thoughts with other people, and I really think through these sorts of discussions is how people learn and get exposed to ideas and progress. And what are things that you would recommend to, the small business owner that is out there working in their business, staying pretty busy, but to expand their thinking, their relationships, their networks, so that they can really, meet some amazing people and do some amazing things?
I think the most important thing is to have a sort of yes mentality and not a no mentality, and I mean, it's certainly sometimes it's got me into trouble on occasions, but I think that you're going to get so much more out of life if you just say yes at every opportunity, and it does mean that most likely you're going to have to try to find 48 hours in the day, but it's but life's just going to be that much more rewarding and satisfying, if you take that approach, and take the sort of nothing ventured, nothing gained, approach as well. I mean, just give things a go, and obviously try to make sure that if the worst comes to worst, it's not going to bring everything crashing down around you. But try to protect against the downside. But just give it a shot, and if the worst comes to worst, and it does all come crashing down, just pick yourself up again and give it a go again. I mean, it's not the end of the world. People who go into Chapter 11 or go bankrupt, some of the most successful entrepreneurs in America have been through that once or twice, and I'm sure it was incredibly demoralizing at the time. But but that's what limited companies are there for, to protect. These things. People do things do go wrong, and in fact, I think about 80% of all companies started from scratch don't get anywhere. So so just be ready to pick yourself up again and start again and learn from it, and I'm sure in the end you'll be successful.
Well, I mean, if I can ask you about mistakes, I mean, the most successful people that I know have made not only the most mistakes, some have made some pretty enormous mistakes. Can you maybe talk to the point about making mistakes and maybe, what are the biggest and most expensive mistakes you've made and the lessons you've learned from mistakes?
Yeah, I suspect the biggest mistake that I made was staying in music retailing longer than I should have done. Once you could start downloading, once the iPod was available, the writing was really on the wall for music retailing, and I stuck with it longer than I should have done, and it cost us a lot of money. So I think cutting one's losses is something which it's often tough to do, but it's important to do early on, so that rather than wasting away a lot of money, you can actually then reinvest that money in creating new jobs elsewhere, rather than sort of chasing a dying industry. Obviously, fortunately, because although music retailing was one of the first businesses we ever started in, because we had diversified, getting out of music retailing, was a small part of the Virgin Empire. By the time the writing was on the wall, but as I say, I suspect we should have got out a bit sooner.
How do you recruit the best people? I mean, you have absolutely star players that work with you, and I've heard you say that there's one important lesson. This is your exact words that you said on the Rebel Billionaire on the last segment. It said, "There's one important lesson I've learned: surround yourself with the best people, trust them, listen to them, and draw on their expertise." And so, any tips for the listeners on how to do this? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, I think to a large extent we promote from within, so we know whether somebody's weakness and their strength before we've actually before we've taken them on. On occasions we obviously do take on in new blood from outside, and what we are looking for is people who are great with people, because again, they're only going to be one person in the organization. They've got to get around them, a whole massive team of people who are, good motivators of other people, and I think that's the principal thing that we're seeking in people.
Okay, and you, I imagine you're not a control freak at all. You're like so good at just letting people do their jobs and going on and being innovative. You have this ability to just put things in other people's hands and trust them. Any recommendations or things on people that?
I think you just have to accept that that if you're going to grow, that people will do things differently than you. Some things they'll do better, some things that they may do not quite as well. But trying to double guess people is a terrible mistake, and you've just got to be willing to stand back and and give people the freedom to get on and get on with it, and that then gives you all those hours that you'd otherwise be spending doing what those people are doing, to think about the bigger picture and move your company forward into new areas. I think for a lot of people listening to this interview, if they could just take 2 weeks off and actually spend those 2 weeks looking for their replacement, and go and find their replacement, and get somebody else to do their job, they'd suddenly find that that with the time that they then free themselves up on for their lifetime ahead, the amount of things they'd be able to achieve. First of all, maybe finding a bit more time with their family, keeping their body more healthy, but then taking their companies forward into new areas. They'll be surprised what they'll be able to achieve by doing that.
That's absolutely great advice. Take 2 weeks off, look for a replacement, and just if everyone did that exercise alone, it could open up an entire world of opportunity and leverage, and change the course of their whole entrepreneurial career. Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself. I mean, I've gotten much better at it over the years. Just, rugged individualists. When you first start out in business, man, you're doing everything. And as you get more successful and more opportunities and more knowledge come your way, it's just the ability to let go. So I've tried to follow a philosophy as best I can, and it's constant improvement, which is I don't want to be in control. I just want to be in charge of the things that I lead. But I want other people to take them and run with them, because that's how you make things happen. Okay, last question I have for you, Richard. What projects are you most excited about in the future? I mean, I should even say that my buddy Yannick Silver, I think, is number 142 on the Virgin Galactic flight. So I should probably mention that to you, because if you run into him, he'll be excited that I said that on the interview.
I think we spoke about these three things, but I think the space project, obviously, Virgin Galactic is going to be fantastically exciting, and we're only a couple of years away from that. The development of clean fuels is something which we're putting lots of time and energy on, and we're determinedly hoping for a breakthrough there. And a lot of time and energy now is going to the Elders project. On the sort of pure business front, I suppose, trying to build a really good alternative airline in the States with Virgin America, and hoping that in 5 years' time it's already made a massive difference to people flying internally in the States. That'll be highly satisfying. And then we've got a few other odds and sods that we're working on.
Okay. Well, I would continue to ask you questions for as long as you gave me time for, but I want to be respectful of your time and your schedule. And I very much appreciate you taking the time to do this. I really do. And any famous last words that you would have for our listeners who are entrepreneurs that I know, hearing from Sir Richard Branson talk about life, talk about business, talk about success, talk about contribution, and just talk about yourself is highly encouraging to a lot of people. So anything you would like to leave the listeners with, and you could recommend anything, read a book, go to your website, or just any words of wisdom that you think would be useful for everyone in business, starting a business, or just out there trying to make something happen.
Go for it.
Go for it. Screw it, let's do it.
Screw it, let's do it. Anyway, good luck.
Excellent. And thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate it. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to my interview with Sir Richard Branson. If you would like to find out more about what Richard is up to, what his companies are up to, listen to my interview on Virgin Unite, simply go to joepolish.com. That's JOEPOLISH.com /Richard Branson. On the site, you can print out the transcripts of this interview and also the hot tip sheets, which is kind of like the footnotes of this interview. And you can share this interview with any entrepreneur that you think it would benefit to help and hear. So please spread the word. And if you'd like to contribute to Virgin Unite, you have the opportunity to do that on the website if you really resonated with some of the things that Richard spoke about on the interview. So thank you so much. Again, the website is joepolish.com /Richard Branson. Now, aside from Sir Richard Branson as someone that I interviewed for Genius Network, I have interviewed a slew of amazing business experts, fascinating human beings, athletes, and people that I think could dramatically enhance the way you run your companies and the way you live life in general. So for a whole list of interviews and to get interviews on a regular basis, visit geniusnetwork.com, www.geniusnetwork.com.
Hello, this is Joe Polish. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this interview. I hope you found it very useful. Please give me your feedback on all of the interviews that you listen to. I'd love to hear your feedback so we can always deliver a great program for you. Our website is www.joepolish.com, and we also have a Joe Polish Recommends section, so you can take a lot of the ideas and concepts that you hear on my Genius Network interview series and apply them to your business and find vendors and resources. You can go to joepolish.com to find that information and click on the Joe Polish Recommends section. And also, if you would like to find out about more interviews and invest in more useful Genius Network series interviews, go to www.geniusnetwork.com. www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks, and eat your competition alive.